Hi, I'm Ashley, and you are listening and watching Confidence in Coffee. What if I was to tell you that you can find confidence despite any of your circumstances, good or bad? I'm going to help you navigate the waters of womanhood, whatever season that is in, whether it's marriage, singleness, or you're drowning in children. I'm going to help you find confidence and hope through Christ. I'm going to leave you with plenty of encouragement and practical tips to overcome those limiting beliefs so you can live a life well. Plus, you know we're going to find a few laughs along the way. So grab your favorite cup of coffee and join me as we chat confidence in coffee. Hey everybody, I am here with my friend Arwen, and I'm super grateful and very optimistic and looking forward to the conversation that we're going to have today. We are going to talk about finances. And we've never really talked about that on Confidence and Coffee, but it is a big part of our journey. It is a big part of who we are. And she's actually going to get in depth of why that is. Arwen Becker co-owned of Becker Retirement Group alongside her husband, Randy. And she has met thousands of women. She's seeking to change the way women are financially educated through her training organization, Life with Arwen, Life Arms Advisors, with the proper tools to succeed and thrive in serving women. Arwen speaks nationally more than 40 times a year, very busy woman. And she is the author of She Handled It, So Can You, hosts the She Handled It podcast, and wrote a YouVersion Women Money devotional. And she is a go-to contributor to TD. Arwen, please correct me, Ameritrade, Yahoo Finance. And she has been married for 18 years, goals. And she has 3 sons, and is a lifelong athlete. I mean, it's obvious you look amazing. As soon as I saw you, I'm like, yeah, she's as beautiful. And so you say you have 3 sons. I have 3 boys. They range from 12 to 6. And then we finally got our girl. But at that point, I didn't even care. At that point, I was like, I don't care. And you know what? The girl was the hardest.
And you still got plenty ahead of you with her.
Oh my gosh. Yes. So is all you have 3 boys?
Yeah, yeah. So the oldest is actually engaged to be married. So I'm gonna get my first daughter next year when they get married in August. So
Wow.
he's 25. He's my adopted son. He was my husband's from a prior marriage, and I adopted him after his mom passed away. So that was my
Wow.
husband's ex-wife. So that was when he was 12. So I adopted him when he was a teenager, but I've known him since he was 3.5. And then we've got the other 2 that are 15 and 17. So I always think with boys, you trade the early years. So I think you've got a lot of it is moving out of your system of the craziness that boys are. Take them to the restaurant and they're running around the table and they're banging their heads against the bottom of the table, and you're looking over, and the family that has daughters, they're like sitting there like coloring and playing with like little dolls, and you're like, what's wrong with this picture?
Yeah.
But now that I've got teenagers, I'm like, and I've already got one that's out of the house. So knowing that experience, I think you got pretty good years ahead of you, to be honest with you.
You know what? It's interesting enough, believe it or not, my little girl is the one that bangs her head underneath the table. But you know what? The
Well,
boys,
she is the youngest.
yeah, and that's the thing. The boys had their share of doing that. And it's so funny because those years are so hard that you forget. And I think that God designed it that way, like for us to be cloudy because it was so survival season.
Yeah.
But I was like actually sitting on the couch that now that you say that, and we're in such a crazy season, 12 through 6. You understand, we have sports every day, practices every day. Our life is we're in the thick of it.
Yep. Yep.
But I believe, which is crazy, but I just know it. I believe I'm in the best season of my life.
Absolutely.
Right. I believe that I'm going to look back on this crazy busy season where I get to watch my children's personalities come out, their dynamic, and miss this. And
Yeah.
so I get every day where I'm like, I'm so ready for you all to be out of diapers and be
Yeah.
independent. And like I'm ready for like a babysitter, one of you to babysit. Like I'm not gonna
Sure,
lie,
sure.
but
But I
yeah,
think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, honestly, Ashley, if there's something that you absolutely just hit that's the most important part, is that every season we're currently in should be looked at as the best season, because you always leave something
yeah,
behind. There's always something that's left behind. It's bittersweet when you go into a new season of life. And I always think back on the infant bringing home the middle of the night. And when we had our last son, we had him at home. That was intentionally. And I just remember that moment of having him on my chest, rocking him to sleep. It's 2 a.m. I'm, of course, exhausted. And yet I knew that was going to be the last season like that for us in our
mhm,
lives. And I ate up every moment of it because I knew in an instant it was going to be gone. And yet, as exhausted as I still knew once I got to the next season of him sleeping through the night, I was going to lose that. I was going to lose that private moment with me, him, and God, just so close and warm. And I always tell him that at the time I had fake nails, and I would, when he would start to doze off, I would just run my nails down his back, and he'd go,
yeah,
and I would let him calm down, and then I would do it again. And it was just those moments, but I knew they were going to be over in an instant. And you
yeah.
always trade one season for the other. And if we're always waiting for the next season, we're going to miss out on the joy and the beauty and the gift that only this season is going to provide us. And so I think you've nailed it. To this season should be the best season, because the season only exists once. Today only exists once, and we better make the most of it.
Amen. I had to learn the hard way, so I received that.
Yeah, me too.
I'm on
And
baby
I think
number
most
4,
moms out
so
there understand
yeah.
that.
So I'm so excited about today because there's something that I read when I was just like getting to know you and what you do, and your book and all the things. And I love, and I've actually never heard it before about when you talk about our finances are connected to our self worth. I've never heard that before. And so I would love to talk about where you had got that revelation. Like where does that come from? Because when I saw that, when I read that, I was like, wow. I mean, it had me
Yeah,
challenging, like deeply thinking about that.
yeah,
Because when I thought about that, I was thinking, like, is it spending? Are we like women, right? Where we're like, and if we don't know our self worth, or we don't aren't content in who we are, and we don't go to Jesus for comfort, I found myself Amazon, Target, TJ
sure.
Maxx, to get that something that's so unfulfilling. But I think that you have a more deeper, profound understanding of it. And so I would love what you mean by that. Would you talk to us about that?
Yeah. You know, so BlackRock is an enormous, enormous company, financial company, and they did a study in 2020. And one of the questions that it came up that 55% of women said yes to was, investing isn't for people like me. And when I read that, my heart sank, because I have met with so many women, and that thought of, well, it's just not for me. I'm not good enough. I'm not going to be able to understand it. This is too complicated. I'm going to leave it to the smarter people, or my spouse to do it, or somebody else in my life to figure that part out. But it just broke my heart, because I realized that the majority of women, because money is so closely tied to everything we do or do not do. It is. I
Right.
mean, we spend our life, we go to work, we get ourselves dressed, and we go to a place, we leave behind our kids, a lot of us, the majority of us, and we go to make money. And we do that because it's going to provide something for us. And yet, the interesting part that I have realized, is I have served women for so many years, and 22 years of having a financial planning practice and serving the general public, but really focusing on the last 7 on women, is so many women believe that if they can't if I don't have the money, if I can't pay my bills, if I can't do the things that I want to do, that is a direct reflection on who I am. And instead of recognizing finances and who we are personally are completely unrelated. And I realized that as I went through my own challenges with money. I was divorced at 24, had a zoology degree. I was unsaved at the time. And that was the first step towards my salvation, to me getting saved. So I got divorced in early 2000. I got saved April 2nd of that year, because it was finally like, oh my gosh, I have this huge void. It is absolutely silent here in my apartment. I made a man my financial plan and that didn't work out. And now I have no idea what to do with my life. And there's just that deep void. And that was what put me on this pathway, and a lot of those silent moments alone in my apartment of how do I fill this void? And so through a coach of mine at the time, he suggested I started reading some books on Jesus. And he's like, I know you've got some issues, and my issues were rooted in my real dad, my biological father. He had my parents divorced when I was 6 months old. I was not supposed to be the kid that was supposed to come around. That was kind of like the oops, we're kind of done. And then all of a sudden my mom got pregnant. So divorced at 6 months, and yet he was in and out of my life briefly. Never could hold down a job. Been married and divorced 5 times. My mom was the first. And yet was the person who preached to me all the time about this guy named Jesus and quoting scripture. And I just thought, if that is what it is to serve Christ, I want nothing to do with it. Because if those are at all related, you can't hold down a job. You don't pay child support. I see you maybe once a year and it's awkward. I don't want anything to do with it. So that is why I resisted. I mean, heavily resisted any talk of God, especially throughout my teens. So leading me to this point in time where I'm now divorced and broke, and I have a zoology degree. That doesn't really scream financial security. And I had to change what I was doing. I was running a wildlife rehabilitation center, and I loved it. I've worked with every wild animal known to man. It's just, I loved that job, but it didn't pay the bills. So here I am, broke, on my own, now needing to actually chase money and get what everybody called a real job, because I couldn't pay my bills. So in a lot of that time, that's when I started to look at this man named Jesus and what this meant and what he was all about, and really starting to study. And then, very shortly after that, bawling tears, very large church that I went forward for prayer. And the day that I got saved, the lady, bless her heart, she was doing her job. She not only prayed with me to get saved, then she asked me if I wanted to get filled with the Holy Spirit. So she prayed with me for that, and I actually did start praying the Holy Spirit that first time. Then she asked me if I wanted to become a member of the church, which I did. She prayed with me for that. And then at the end, she goes, you know what? They actually have baptism at the end of the service too. Would you like to get baptized? I'm like, dear lady, okay.
Let's slow down a bit. This is very new.
I got baptized a year later. But all is to say, in that time period, that was really the first moment that I started to understand where my self-worth came from.
Right.
And yet I had, at this point, 25 years of history of being in financial lack, not having enough to pay the bills, having handmade clothes, having to go to Goodwill or Value Village, constantly being told no, that I couldn't do things because we didn't have the money for it. So there was this lack of confidence that I had in that one area. I felt like I could do all these other things because I felt I had control over, but that was the one area I struggled to take responsibility for. And so it was through that process of getting a divorce, and I had made him my financial plan, but I also did it again. Round 2, I made my current husband, who's now 18 years, as you said, but I did the same thing. I married him at the time. He was a financial advisor, still is. And I just really didn't learn that first time around until the Great Recession hit. And that was where I really had that deep look into how tight is my value to whether or not I can pay my bills. And recognizing it, and that was my time where I realized for the first time in my life, um, my worth as an individual, as a human, as a woman, as a mom, as a wife, as a financial advisor, did not come on whether or not I could make payroll that month, whether or not I could even pay my mortgage that month. Because when we went through the Great Recession, it nearly undid everything. I mean, we kept our company, we kept our people employed, but it finally massive download of or decline financially, 33% in 2009, 33% in 2010. And so eventually it led to the loss of our home, the home that my youngest
Mm.
son was born in.
Oh, wow. You
And
guys were part of that.
it was awful. And it was awful for so many reasons, not just for me personally, but because we were both financial advisors. We ran a company. We had to talk to people about money every day. So talk about tying your worth to your financial picture. That was really the lowest moment for me, but it was also the moment where I started to recognize my financial worth had nothing to do with how God saw me, with what my capabilities were, with how great of a mom I was, with how great of a wife I was. It was just a component. It just was it's such a component that filters into so many things. And so ultimately, and I guess to come to the end of this thought, is that was the start for me, where I started to recognize when I took that phone call from whoever it was trying to say, we need your payment, you're 3 months behind on your car, whatever it was. And I just laughed and I said, you know what? You can repo my car, which didn't happen, but you can repo my car. But you can't take my children. There are things in my life you cannot take away from me. And right now I need to focus on those things, because
Right.
this money thing is still, it's only a part of it. Whether you have it or not, it does not change the inherent value
Right.
that God put within inside of me, my abilities and what I can do. And that was really my rebuilding moment, which in the years to follow led me to spending a lot more focused time and eventually shifting our company to 80% working with women and focusing on women.
Wow. So you kind of birthed a passion not just in finances but finances for women because you saw, I mean, when you talked about your children and the mom guilt. So I was a single mom and I remember, I mean, I was broke, okay? I was poor my whole life. So I relate with you in that way. And I remember I kind of rebelled when I became an adult. I mean, I guess you could call it rebellion, where it was like was going to get whatever I wanted
Yeah.
and no one was gonna tell me no, and when
Yeah.
I wasn't gonna break any promises to me or my kids, like, that kinda stuff.
Yeah.
And I still am very much, there's still things where it's like, we went without clothing, and so that's something where it's like, my kids will never go without clothing, like, that's just the
Right.
reality, like, there's things where it's still very,
Sure.
very
Sure.
important to me, um, but I just remember I love how you talk about basically, there was a stripping away. Right? And then I love that God strips certain things away from us or allows these things to happen, whether
Right.
he caused them or not. I mean, God works everything for our good, right?
100%.
Where we see, wow, none of that where I was trying to find this worth, this value, um, has anything to do with how God sees me and within
Right.
me. And I believe that like if we don't get that, and if you want to touch on that, if we don't get that solid, like that build internally of who we are, because I actually hate even using, I call it Christianese words like that. Like
Sure.
who, what does
Sure.
that mean? Identity, value, like, because think about it, as a non-Christian, I never used any of that. As a non, right? Like we never
Yeah.
used any of that.
Yeah.
Um, and so I just think that just how loved you are.
Yeah.
If that doesn't resonate, like I think about it, you're a mom of boys, like our children want to make us proud, right? They're like, my mom loves me. Like
Yeah.
when they're
Yeah.
teenagers, they may be like, oh, mom, you're annoying, but it matters.
Yeah.
And if we see God in that way, like he just loves
Yeah.
us and we
Yeah.
live in that approval, like that pride of God loves me. What? Um, and then all that other kind of stuff comes in place, right? The
Yeah.
finances
Yeah.
and
And you reminded me of something specifically on that line. So, fast forward to 2016. So at this point I was full blown advisor, but I still wasn't doing, the public speaking aspect of our company. Cause that's how a lot of financial advisors, they do dinner seminars and things of that nature. So my husband did that for the first 17 years. But in 2016, I landed in the ER, and this reminds me of kind of the person that you said I was going to be this thing, and this is what was going to happen. I was going to, I had the drive to do it, and nobody was going to tell me I couldn't do it. But I landed in the ER because I thought I was having a heart attack,
oh my.
and it was debilitating stress. And it was just
Oh
because I
wow.
really truly thought, even with this, doing my Bible study every morning and going through my devotionals and, going through checking all the boxes,
Checking all the
right?
boxes.
Right. Exactly. Study God, check, mark, go on to the next thing, do my prayer time, check mark. Um, so I recognized that I had broke. I mean, I was starting to have suicidal thoughts. I was trying to communicate this to my husband, but he just could not fathom that somebody who was so driven, who was so on top of things, who was able to keep everything together, child of an alcoholic, very, very typical. And all that I was falling apart, and I could not figure out how to get back on the top of it. And so I initiated the sale of my half of our 17-year practice at that time. I was just like, I'm done. I can't handle the financial ebb and flow of this business. And it's great one day, it's terrible the next day. Not being able to always know where money's coming from is the nature of being an entrepreneur. And so I was just done. And the day before final signatures, I mean, we were literally, I'd laid off employees. We had others on notice. Our email was set to go to the 600 clients. And the night before final signatures, we told our children, and I'll never forget our youngest crawling up in my lap. And he's like, what do you mean you and dad aren't going to work together anymore?
Oh,
And devastation. They were devastated. My husband was devastated, but I was just like, I can't handle the financial piece anymore. I'm not built for this. I'm built to
wow.
feel financially secure, to have money in the bank, to make sure that I can pay my bills, because a lot of women are that way. We want security.
Security.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
want security. We
Yeah.
want security, and a commissions-based business, and just a lot of times doesn't provide that level of security, and especially if it's your own. That's the thing.
Right.
And we were always putting money back into it. So I was just like, I was done. And so that next morning, before we went to sign the final papers, I went for a run. And this has always been my time with God, going for a run, going for hikes, just this quiet time, me and God, no headphones. And I always get my revelations. I just do. It's just always been my thing, whatever the topic was. And so I'm going running, and God just drops it straight into my spirit. He says, Arwen, you go forward with the sale of the practice, it will end your marriage. And
Oh, whoa.
yeah, yeah. So we arrive a couple hours later for final signatures. He pushes them across the table. My husband's like, I think it's still a good idea. I'm still struggling a little bit with this whole idea of not working with my wife anymore. I was going to go to work for another advisor. And he's like, but you got to ask her. And I was just like bawling. And I just told the guy, on paper, it makes sense, but I know it's not right for my family. And so I called the whole thing off. And the next night, it was Sunday night, put my kids to bed, 9 p.m., pitch dark out. I live outside the Seattle area. It's rainy, kind of wet roads. And I came downstairs, and the moment I saw my husband, I had an absolute panic attack, which has never happened a day in my life since, ever. Just could not breathe. I was like, what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to go back? I mean, it was just like this idea, because I thought I was leaving this life behind. I guess kind of like somebody who decides to stick with their marriage after they thought they were going to divorce it. It's like, I still got to figure out how to clean this up, because it's not working for me. And so I was overwhelmed. So I went out for a run, because that's the only thing I know to do. So I went out for a run that night, and I did what I had always done. I expected that God was going to drop in my spirit exactly what it was I was supposed to do. It's like, what am I supposed to do? Bawling, crying, please tell me, how am I supposed to handle this? What am I supposed to tell my people? Blah, blah, blah. Nothing, no answers. And so I just got louder, louder and more upset, thinking that if I screamed louder, he might actually answer me. And by the time I was getting home, I only heard 2 words, and none of them were answers to my questions. All he said was, "I'm here." And I'm like, that is not an answer. That is not an answer to how I'm supposed to go back, what I'm supposed to do, what's supposed to change, right? And I got home upset because I didn't get what I needed from God at that time. So I thought. And then 2 days later, it finally hit me. That was all that mattered. Knowing he never left me, that he was there, and also saying, I'm not here right now to give you answers because you have come to rely on that whenever
Oh,
you ask me, you feel like you get an answer. And right now, I just need you to trust me that it will be revealed in time and you will be ready when it does. And that was, besides the day on April 2nd, 2000, when I got saved, the most significant moment in my life that I had. I went out and made myself a little cross ring. I don't know if you can see it.
that's
And
pretty.
it has September 26th, 2016 engraved into it, because it was that reminder to me that he's there. He has never left me. He is never going to leave me. And I have to be willing to fully and completely let go. Controlling, perfectionist, all of these things that have given me lots of accolades and a lot of pats on the backs and atta girls and way to go, that I had to let go of all of it and trust that no matter what it was that I was going to be facing in my future, that if I didn't have the answer, it was going to come in time. But the most important thing in my entire life is I was never doing it alone. And I think that's what we all need to recognize. God is always, always there. Even when you don't hear what it is that you're expecting to get from him, he's never going to leave you.
Yeah. And we like to say that's cliche, but it's so powerful and simple. And here's what I love. Not only do women love to security, but we love to control. It's in Genesis. Women will want to control as soon as we sinned. And it's so true because it's just in our nature to do that.
Yeah.
But you're an athlete, and it's like you had to win at doing nothing except trusting when you've had to like work your whole freaking life. I mean, powerful,
Yeah.
powerful, powerful. And do you find that that's like you've got it every day, right? Like, or do you sometimes want to fall back into like, I want to take control of this, but I'm not going to take control. I'm going to give it to God. Like it's a daily exercise. Like
Yeah.
that's why I bring up being athletic, What would you say to the women that are like, did you get it? Is it
It's
just
100%. I mean, you have to practice. I mean, that's the thing. Anything that you want to be good at, you have to continually practice and refine. And that was really the pinnacle moment for me. And then that's what led me to telling my husband, I want to take over all the seminars. I want to start doing the marketing. I want to do public speaking, which I'd never done a day in my life. And that's what led me into marketing to women, and then eventually doing that so well that I train other advisors to do it, and eventually leading to us selling our company just a number of months ago. And it was because of that moment, that absolute moment in time marks that change and shift in me, of really doing it with God instead of me really taking that position with my husband as well. That it's like, if you can't do it, sit down. I got this handled. I'm going to take care of it all. And I will run myself into the ground if I have to, because I really did believe, because I'd had so much in my history that had showed me it worked, that if I just pushed long and hard enough, I could make it work. And it finally, again, led me into the ER, finally led me to, to collapse, nearly implode my marriage because of it, because I was just running all over my husband. And so it has become a daily practice, but it's just like anything. Now it's really simple for me to recognize when pride and ego start getting in the way. Like, oh yeah, this is my, I was like, oh wait, no, this isn't my thing. This
Right.
is a thing I get to do because God has given me one more day with some more, air in my
Right.
lungs, and I get
You
the
get
opportunity to
stronger.
do it.
Right.
But
Your
it's a lot
character,
easier as we practice.
discernment. I mean, that's where discernment is born. Okay. So
Oh,
I'm
100%.
gonna. Hey, really quick. Did you know that I have a community perfect just for you where you get exclusive content that you can't get anywhere else, not on this podcast, not on social media, where we dive deep into the Bible. You get daily encouragement. You get audio messages from me, and you get access to our Facebook community where you can connect with everyone else in the community, plus 2 coaching calls a month. There's so much more, but be a part of a community that actually gives a crap about you. I needed someone to give a crap about me. And so that's why I created this. And even better, it's all through text message right to your phone. You don't have to download an app. You don't have to check email. It goes right there. And we get to connect in a way that I wouldn't get to connect with you anywhere else. I'll drop some information in the show notes when you leave a review, but also you can go to ashleyhenriot.com and you can find out more there, subscribe, and connect with me, your calling in confidence. Funny too, because you have a psychology and zoology, and then you just became this master at finances.
Yeah, you never know,
You
again,
never
where God's
know.
gonna take you.
That's
Yeah,
honestly, that's encouraging. So I want to talk to you about something, but if I could
yeah,
backtrack for a second on
sure.
that. But your message is just how, and we talked about that, how our financial worth, it affects our self-worth, especially women, um and the responsibilities, and then it doesn't matter, single, married. That's why I brought it being a single mom, because you talk to single moms as well. And then you mentioned some numbers, and you said 80% of men die married, 80% of women die single, women live
Correct.
longer. I'm sorry, this is so good. Need more money and are better investors, but a majority don't even try.
Mhm.
And that this money thing, um, isn't for them because we put our security in our husbands, right?
Right.
And we're just like, you're gonna figure it out, and I married you, and all is gonna be well, and I'm gonna be Cinderella. But oh my gosh, like that is it is so it we do need to take responsibility, because we do need to be smart for when, because we have a legacy to carry on as
Yeah,
well,
right,
not just the
right.
men in our life, but we as women. And so, and then you coming, being divorced and going through that. Um, do you want to touch on that just a little
Yes,
bit?
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, so, that when I really understood that fact that 80% of men die married and 80% of women die single, that coupled with a woman will spend on average 15% of her working years caring for children or ailing parents, compared to 1.6% for a man. So that means a woman is putting less into her social security, less into her retirement plans, but yet is living longer. I mean, we know that women live longer. So understanding these components, um, makes it very clear to me, especially now when I talk to women, that nobody is responsible for your financial security but you, because the likelihood that you will be the last woman standing is very high. 80% of widows, this is a terrible statistic. It just absolutely breaks my heart. 80% of widows collecting Social Security live below the poverty level, and most of them didn't when their spouse was living. That is a problem to the grandest degree. And there are so many factors that lead to that. One is not understanding what you have and how it's going to keep you personally safe if you're married. Because if you're going to outlive your spouse, the likelihood that they're going to need some form of care and they're going to drain the assets is high, about 70%. So they'll drain some of the assets. Is there going to be enough left for you to live out the rest of your best life, what that might be? So that is a part of it. The fact that a lot of women do leave the responsibility to their spouse to do the planning and not really understand where things are is very much an issue. A woman really ought to be saving upwards of 14% of her income to be able to live the standard of living that she is used to. So even for those young people listening, if you're in your 20s and into your 30s, utilizing a company plan that you have at work, or at least any sort of saving vehicle like an IRA, where you can put something, I don't care how much, $20 a month in, and just start the habit of putting money into an account that is going to be utilized and saved for your future, not for, the great next trip that's coming up, for your future, right? And if there's anything that we can do now, all it is just creating a habit. Like I always joked, I always thought before I had kids, I'm like, man, when I'm pregnant, I'm going to stop working out. I'm going to eat whatever I want. No. When I got pregnant, I thought that's the dumbest idea ever. The last thing I want to do is going to be hard enough just to get back to where I came from. Why would I make it harder on myself? So I remember being at the gym, like big and pregnant, just barely walking on the treadmill. And it wasn't that I was doing something great on the treadmill. It's just that I did the act of staying consistent, of just still going to the gym, lacing up my shoes, doing a little bit of walk, and then turning and going home. And that's what just having this habit of taking a little bit of what we make and putting it away for our future and doing it over time. Because what we do often, I think this is very human nature. We devalue the seed. We look at it and, talk about God's kingdom. I mean, talk about multiplying, 5 fish and 2 loaves of bread, or is it the flip? Do I have it right? 5 fish and 2 loaves, right? And then feeding 20,000. I mean, come on. God can do anything he wants. But if we devalue the seed and we look at it and we say, well, what is $20 when it costs me X amount to live in the future? That's nothing. So we devalue it. And then we waste 5 years, or we waste 10 years, or my God, I'll raise my hand, both hands, and say, wasted almost 15 years of my best saving years because we were constantly putting it back into our business and we weren't doing what we ought to have done, which was still carve out a little bit every single month and put it into our accounts versus always shoving it back into this business, which paid off in the end. But man, the lack of security that I had for so many of those years, because I didn't have this nice nest egg. And if something would have happened to my husband, I had life insurance, thank God. But still, there would have been a pretty big financial hole because he was the main breadwinner for a lot of those years. I was operations. I wasn't even a financial advisor until after the Great Recession. So all those years I was working unpaid, basically from 2002 up until about 2013. And so anything that we can do to just start the process, because knowing that nobody else is responsible for you. I'm married to a retirement planner. He is amazing. He always believed our company would get to where it was for us to be able to sell it, but he's built for the ebb and flow. I wasn't. That's why it was so hard on me. And so understanding just the basic components of putting a little away every single paycheck towards your future, having, if you have a company plan at work, a 401k, a 403b, a TSP, whatever that might be, utilizing any matching, at the very least, putting in as much as your employer is matching, whether that be 3% or 4%, or sometimes it might be 6%. But that's not enough. We have to continue over time increasing that. And the beauty is now everything's so automated. Most company plans have a little button you can select that one specific day every year, you can have it increase your contribution amount by a certain amount you determine. So maybe that's 1% every first of the year. It's going to automatically start pulling that extra
Right. We
1% out
do
of your
that.
paycheck. You won't miss it. You won't miss 1%.
Right.
It's not big enough of an impact to really, truly miss it. But most of us just devalue
So we dismiss it.
even the start. And then we're 5, 10 years, 15, 20 years down the road, and we're going, why didn't I do that? I mean, that was me. Why didn't I do that? You little
It's like
24-year-old
it's
divorcee,
like
why didn't you listen to yourself?
right. It's like but you're helping so many other 24-year-olds,
Yeah.
you know? And
And my kids.
it's like I love how you brought up the pregnancy thing. I mean, I still ate whatever I wanted or what my body would want. At that point, you're so nauseated, I'll take whatever.
Yeah.
But I get it. Like it's like, it's just one Oreo, you know? Or I already ate the Oreos, so why not eat the whole pack of Oreos? I already messed up, so why not, right? It's so, so important, even if it's $5, right? Like,
Right. Right.
and that's what we teach our children as well. We do that as well. Like I can't even tell you, like, intentionally have certain bank accounts, like a bunch of bank accounts where we
Yeah.
save in different
Yeah.
ways. Like we save for Christmas like the
Absolutely.
year before, and we have a little account, we just put a little bit towards that.
Yep.
So when
Love it.
November, December comes, we're not strapped, right? Or we have
Or
like,
going into debt, worse
emergency
yet.
funds or stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's so important. I love, and here's the thing too, when you talk about marriage, it's like, my husband and I unite our finances. Like we don't look at our finances separately. Um, but also with that being said, like um you're not saying that. You're not saying separate your finances. You're saying you both unite, and he's setting you up as he's supposed to as your husband. Like it is I mean, would you agree that it is the husband's responsibility to also be supportive or contribute to your future, like knowing
Absolutely.
that you're taken care of, like by like when he's gone, right?
Yeah. And men feel that. I mean, men feel the need to provide. They want to. Talk about a man who feels emasculated when he loses his job and
Right.
doesn't feel like he has that ability to contribute in that way. That's really, really hard on a lot of men. But you actually touched on something I think is really important to say. Um, I think most people come to a marriage with differing views on money. And the biggest challenge that we as financial advisors face is getting two people on the same page. And my book, which is called She Handled It, So Can You. She Handled It actually was a term I used when I was asked about my mom years ago. And she was a woman who handled it, started from less than zero at 45 to have enough to retire when she was in her late 60s. But it was a lot of sacrifice on her part. And she was really fortunate that her daughter, me, became a financial advisor to be able to help walk her through that part, right? But most women don't have that. But my mom was facing many, many different challenges, not only an ex-husband who didn't pay any child support, but then also her current husband, my stepdad, who passed away last year, did not contribute financially to the family. Actually, worse yet, often made it even harder. Her wages were garnished because of bad business decisions. There were a number of different things that he did that made her job even harder. But God still, in the end, provided for her. But I talk about values-based planning. And when you as an individual understand what your values, when you have money, what are those values? And when I ask women in a room of 100 women, they always say the same thing. First two words are security and freedom. It's not travel. Okay. Most of us want to travel, but I want to feel safe. I want to be able to have the choices. I want to make my own choices, right? I don't
Right.
want to be a burden on my children. I
Right.
want to stay in my home. I don't want
Right.
to have that ripped away from me. Those are all intangible. They're emotionally based. And yet the biggest difference that I see is when you ask men, they usually surround goals, being debt free, a second home, a boat, golf. Again, they're not inherently bad. But it just goes to show you men and women often look at things very different. Women tie them to an emotional intangible.
Yes.
And so getting on the same
That's
page
good.
is vital for the success of your marriage, because the largest segment in the US getting divorced today, they call it gray divorce, is people who've been married longer than
Yeah.
25 years. And the number one reason people divorce is money.
Right.
So, how do we get on the same page when both of us come at it differently? And my book walks through that, of being able to understand what your values are, understand what your spouse's values are separately, and then coming together and seeing where the two of them can be combined. So then we can say, this is what, these are our values as a couple. And then does this financial decision fit with our values or does it not?
Mm.
And that can be one of the hardest talks to have. And it can sometimes take months. My husband and I had to have therapy for a lot of years, because my view of money, his view of money, way he grew up, his mom had MS. She was wheelchair bound. Dad provided, was able to be an incredible man for her and help her throughout those horrible, horrible years. But their view of money, and then what I dealt with, is this matriarchal woman who handled everything. And the men were basically, they were just a cardboard cutout. I mean, it was just like, that was about as much as they did.
Right.
And so, it's like you have these like things, and I got it. And he's
Right.
like, but I got it. And I'm like, but I don't like the way you do it. And so that's often what a financial advisor helps with, to be able to bridge the gap. It's kind of a money therapist, to say, I hear you. I hear what you're saying.
I love that.
But we need to figure out how to make it work for both of you. And ultimately, I still come back to the same thing. In the end, I need to put a greater weight on how it works for her, because she is likely going to be the last person seeing if the planning worked or not. He's passed away. He didn't see if the plan worked or not, but she's left saying, after all is said and done, do I still have enough to stay in my home? Or do I have to move in with my kids, or sell the family home and move someplace I don't want to move, because
Right.
it's too expensive to live around here, or whatever it might be. So making sure that we're on the same page, that is very hard for a lot of families. A lot of couples have very different views. Women tend to be more conservative than men do in general. So that's another challenge, but that's what a financial advisor helps with. And any advisor worth their salt better do planning jointly. Because if I have a man come into my office and says, yeah, oh no, my wife, I handle all this, I say, oh, it's great. I'll be able to gather enough information in this first visit. But the second visit, she needs to be there, or we're not meeting.
Oh,
She
wow.
needs to know what she has.
That's
I'm
good.
not going to rely on you. You can find another advisor to do that. I'm gonna say it a little bit nicer. You know what I mean?
No, yeah.
But
Right.
but that's the reality of it. I don't need you to just take care of her, because I've seen so many women screwed over by people who said they would take care of her. And when it came down to it, life changed. People grew apart, whatever it was, they got divorced or he died and it wasn't, whatever. And it didn't work.
Yeah.
And then she's left at 55 broke.
Yeah.
Terrible. Terrible. And it's
A-
avoidable.
And I want to, is your book, is that what your devotional is based on YouVersion? Is your
Yeah.
book?
Yeah. Mhm.
I
Yep.
want you to give us information on what we can find, your resources, where we could find your book, if you're on social media, your podcast. But there is one thing that I would love to add before we close, and I would love for you to pray over our listeners that
Love it.
I believe received this message. But I love how you talk about marriage, and I love how you talk about worth, and I love how this is it's just so beautiful in God, right? How he has ordained things so intentionally. But when we talk about marriage, a man's number one need is to provide. And a woman's number one need is security. And I want to go back where you're like, it's not travel, and you have young women where they think, because they don't know, they think that's what it is, all that surface stuff.
Yeah.
But genuinely, that is the need. That is the real desire. And I believe, and I made this mistake That's probably why I know. But I believe in that regard, if we believe in the intention of our spouse, like I believe that he genuinely wants to provide and he wants to make his wife happy. Like my husband's number one thing was, I want to make you happy. I want to make you
Yeah.
happy. Um, and if we don't know who we are as women, like we don't know our self worth, we can take that him wanting to make us happy, provide, um, and be like, "Well, buy me the $200 pairs of shoes." Well,
Yeah.
I'm gonna, max out the credit card. Let's go here. Let's live off impulse. And internally, he's stressing out, right? All men
Right.
are like, "Don't
Right.
hide the Amazon boxes,"
Right.
right?
Right.
Um, and it's creating this tension because he's trying to make you happy, but you're leading it because your worth isn't where it needs to be into
Right.
other things, and it's causing even more havoc within your marriage.
Yeah.
And so I just find that so profound and necessary, that we do take our responsibility and that we do step up as women in the regard of like, we have a part in this. Like,
Yeah.
we have a part in our finances. We're not children and we're not like, you're going to take care of it. We need to be united in everything we do.
Yep.
Like we want to say that women are like, behind every good man is a good woman, and that's true, but that doesn't just be equal in certain areas. Like that's
Yeah.
in every
Yeah.
single area,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so we have to really find that of importance that like we want security, they want to provide,
Yeah.
and we need to take our part in making sure that that security and that provision him providing is also our part as well.
That's right.
um
That's
and
right.
so I love that you touched on that, and I know that I find value in these interviews all the time, and so I'm like taking it in myself, and so I'm so grateful for you coming on Confidence and Coffee. I'm really excited. I think your message is profound because you just have financial stuff, but you are speaking, I mean, you're getting in the depths. I love it. And so,
Yeah. Thanks.
if you would pray for our listeners and then tell
Sure.
us where we could find you and your resources and all the things.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start with the resources. So I one of the things, so my book is She Handled It, So Can You, an inspiring and empowering financial guide for women. I would gladly give that out to the first 20 women who DM me at my Life with Arwen on Instagram, and I'll be happy to send you out a signed copy for that. That's going to give you just a lot of just the basics on, first of all, why do I serve women? Why is it important for women to really take responsibility? And then looking at this values-based planning piece that I talked about. But then also talking about some of the basics of financial planning. And my book is all written utilizing story, because I think that's a really powerful way to teach a lot of
Yeah.
concepts. I don't teach through data. I mean, there's a little data, of course, you have to have that, but it's really through the financial concepts are all through my mistakes that I've made in my life, stories about my mom, and then certainly 22
Wow.
years of clients. So it's very engaging and
Wow.
interesting. It's kind of my answer to a lot of financial books that absolutely bored me to tears and I just wouldn't even read. So that I would recommend. A couple of other resources that I would suggest, and I just want to make sure are on the podcast. A mentor and friend of mine by the name of David Bach. So he's a 10-time New York Times bestselling author, but financial guru. And he's written many books, but one of the books that I used to teach on, do national, I taught more of these than anybody else around the country, is Smart Women Finish Rich. And so my book is really kind of that priming to the pump of believing that you can, inspiring you to take responsibility, and getting started. This book, Smart Women Finish Rich, is a lot of the resources and how-tos. So Bach is Bach. And so that's going to really help anybody, depending, it doesn't matter what age you're, if you're in your 20s and you're just starting to, you're wondering, how do I open my first investment account? It's going to give you a lot of the differences between maybe why you would use a Fidelity account, or why would you do a Vanguard or TD Ameritrade or whatever it might be. It's going to give you a lot of resources, but it's still very, very beautifully written. The other one that's similar to that is Smart Couples Finish Rich. It's almost identical to Smart Women. So for anybody who is part of a couple, when my husband and I read this book, both being advisors, we had an 18 bullet point checklist of things we needed to work on in our own financial lives. We either needed to update or we just hadn't tackled yet. So if as advisors, we had 18 things to work on. You can imagine if that's not your area of expertise, you might have a few more. So that's really, really helpful. So those two books I would recommend as a great answer to a lot of the how-tos of being able to get on top of your finances, because I always love reading. Podcasts are amazing for this too, but reading is the most non-threatening way to get corrected. You're like,
That's
ooh,
good.
I do that.
That's good.
But you get to save ego and save face, right? So I love reading for that purpose, but it still has to be something that is interesting to you, that's going to help get you down the road. Because I can say the funny thing is this book came out 20 years ago, and then they did a revision, Smart Women Finish Rich. When I got divorced and I was working with Amway, and they had their list of books to read, that was brand new on the financial books. And I avoided all of the financial books. I did not read my first financial book probably until almost a decade later, which is so infuriating. If I could just take my 24-year-old self and shake her by the shoulders and say, read a book. You know how much you would have learned if you just would have done that one thing. So yeah, I didn't finally read that book until, 15 years after it came out. And I was kicking myself because it was on that list. I wanted to read how to win friends and influence people, and, confidence and power in dealing with people, and the 5 love languages, anything
Yeah.
that was emotionally based, right? So
Yeah.
those are going to be some great resources. I'm on all platforms. You can find my podcast where I interview women who've overcome major adversity in their life and what they learned throughout that process. That's called She Handled It. And that's on all platforms. And then the place where I spend most of my time is on Instagram. Everything is moved to all other platforms, TikTok and YouTube Shorts and Facebook and everything. But my handle on that is Life with Arwen. So life.with.arwen. And that's the best place to just see daily encouragement, because I'm just like you. You're hilarious. I love watching your stuff because I'm like, she's like the funny friend I want to hang out with. I tend to be a little intense. So my personality is much more, I just want positivity. Everything that I put on there, at any moment that you go, I just want it to make you feel better. It will not be negative. It's going to be encouraging, whether that's about money, whether it's about parenting, whether that's about daily life. That is what I'm utilizing that platform for, because I'm just like you. There's so much negativity, and I'm here to do whatever I can to counterbalance that. So that's Life with Arwen. And the last and final thing, I guess I would say, before I pray, my most favorite, there's actually 2 scriptures that have been really my scriptures throughout my life. And one is James 1:2-5. Count it all joy, my brethren, when you face trials of many kinds, knowing that the testing of your faith will produce patience, and let patience have its perfect worth, and you'll be complete and lacking nothing. And I have held on to that for really since the beginning of when I got saved, because, those trials are inevitable. They come in every form. They come in health, and you get on top of those things. And then next, it's parenting, or it's, money, it's anything,
Right.
it's family, it's friends. So we're always facing that, but understanding that God is testing, and he's doing a perfect work if we don't quit. It's okay to want to quit. It's okay to feel that way. Just don't. Be willing to take one more step. Know that it's hard. Know that current problems are temporary, and that there will be
Amen.
better days on the other side of it. So that,
Amen.
and then my husband and I have on the inside of our wedding rings is Proverbs 3:3. let love and faithfulness never leave you. Bind them around your neck, write them on the tablet of your heart. So those have really been my two things, especially as it relates to love and marriage. And marriages constantly go under testing, and especially those who work together for 22 years. I think there's a special place in heaven for those of us who made that choice, because it
It's
comes with a
hard.
whole nother set.
Real life, I worked
Argue
with
in the
my
morning.
husband for a year. That's it.
Yeah.
We were like, we love each other too much, babe.
Yeah. Yeah,
We
very
need to
much
be
a
done.
challenge. So for any of you out there who have the guts to work with your spouse, I just figure we've been married for like 55 years for the amount of interface and time, because we were basically together for 23 hours a day. So, definitely another challenge. So, well, thank you very much. And yes, I would love to pray over all of your listeners. Oh, dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you and praise you. You are so amazing. You are so just incredible. And you hear every little cry of our heart, God. Nothing goes without you knowing it. You see it, you feel it. Our tears are tears that you weep along with us, God, that you do not leave us. And I just thank you for that, God, that you are always present in the depths, in the struggle, in the strain, on top of the mountains when we're rejoicing and joyful and we're prosperous and abundant. You're standing there as well, God. And we just thank you for that. We thank you that you are always with us, Lord. And I just pray for any women under the sound of my voice, God, that if she's struggling in this area of money, Lord, that you give her the prompting, the push. And this is probably you speaking through me right now, to start taking responsibility, to
Mm,
start leading the charge
yeah.
in her own life in a way in which she can be a partner. If she's married, she can be a partner with her spouse in helping to yoke up together and pull in the same direction, God. And we just know that when two come together in your name, God, you are there in the midst of it.
Yeah.
And we believe that, Lord. We pray for united finances within families, God. We pray discernment over decisions that are being made that are financial, that Lord, that you stop those and close those doors when they come, Lord, and make it very apparent when another direction needs to be taken, Lord. But if there's something, a step of faith that needs to occur, God, in her life and her family's life, God, give her the courage to do it. But more importantly, to have those tough conversations with herself. If she's leading herself, help her lead herself well. Help her not wait for somebody else, she's hoping to get married down the road, to be a strong, confident, capable, well able woman that is going to draw in a man that is going to be an amazing complement to her strengths and not be a crutch that she needs. Lord, help her be fully prepared, fully sustained, help her focus totally on you. And Lord, just provide all of the provision that each of these women need in this moment right now. Help them look towards their breakthrough. Help them believe their breakthrough is right around the corner, God, and help them be willing to stay committed to the process, Lord. Marriage is tough. Marriage has hard moments, and finances are a part of that, God. So we just unite any couples out there, Lord, strengthen them, encourage them, help them take the time to do the things together to get their finances in order so they can truly and deeply live the life that you have created, God, because we know we are to be a river and not a swamp. You are going to bring finances to us so that they can pass through us. And it's not so we can just have our needs met, but that we can be a blessing to our community, to the people that we come in contact with, but that we can also be an amazing example to our children and our grandchildren and the generations to come, and those people that are looking to us for direction, God, that the way in which we live our lives, they will be improved because of it, God. And we just thank you so very much. We thank you for the community that Ashley has reached and continues to encourage and uplift and inspire. And we just praise you in Jesus' mighty name. Amen.
Amen. It was so good to have you, and I would love to have you back,
Love it. Would love it.
and continue talk about getting all your nuggets and wisdom, especially during this crazy time when we need some financial
We
order.
do. We do.
And coffee.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy that? I'd love to see you over at ashleyhandout.com, where you can subscribe to this podcast and channel on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And while you're at it, I'd love to see the value that you found in Confidence and Coffee. So drop the ratings, the reviews in the comments. Let's subscribe to this channel and tell a friend too. Make sure you tune in next time on Confidence and Coffee.